Hello there. Today I'm taking a look at a Calvados. So this is Victor Gontier's Vieille Reserve Domfontais Calvados from the 2004 vintage. So Calvados is from northern France. It's the Normandy region's own special brandy distilled from the local cider. Domfrontais is one of two sub-regions of Calvados, the other being Pays d'Auge. It's a sub-region comprising 115 communes out of the 1550 communes that make up the greater Calvados region. It's centred on the town of Domfrontais, and it acquired its own AOC, I believe, in 1998, although some sources say 1997. It's possible that the AOC was given in 1998 but backdated to 1997. That would be my explanation of that. And Domfrontais is distinguished by its orchards, which have a particular soil type containing large amounts of schist and granite, so relatively free draining soils. And the region here, more to the southern part of Normandy, also has south-facing orchards, and the weather conditions tend to be a little milder. But the principal differentiation for Domfrontais is that its rules require it to include at least 30% of spirit distilled from pears. Now, any producer within Calvados can use pear as well as apple to produce Calvados. However, here this 30% minimum is stipulated, and it tends to give the spirit a slightly softer, more fruity nature. The sub-region's rules also ensure that you have to plant at least 15% of pear trees, and also stipulates that to use the sub-regional designation you have to have at least 25% of your orchards that have produced 16 vintages previously. So there's a requirement for a proportion of the fruit to come from mature trees as well. I've not been able to find out a lot about the Gontier family. I've seen suggestions that the current producers are the third generation of the family to run the business, and I've seen other suggestions that they're the sixth generation. But certainly they're a family-owned farmhouse distiller. They produce a small range. They produce one example of Calvados, they produce a pear spirit, and they make a Normandy cider. And they're based in the commune of Georges-de-Rouelley, which is right in the heart of the Domfrontais region. The suggestions I can see are that the Gontiers actually make both pear and apple ciders separately. They refer to themselves as, you'll see on the label here, production fermiere. So the wine is farm made, so the fruit for fermentation and distillation can only come from their farm, where it's farmed organically. I've seen notes that suggest that fermentation can take about 6 weeks, but actually it looks as if the Gontiers tend to allow their ciders to ferment using indigenous yeasts. So all they do is grind up the fruit, put it into barrel and allow it to ferment. Whatever the case, the region's rules say that fermentation has to be completed by the end of September in the year following picking. The apples have to be picked with at least 100 grams per litre sugar content, and the fermentations will produce a cider that has a strength of between 4 and 6% alcohol. The cider ages in barrel then for 11 months until the following September, when a mobile wood-fired copper still, a pot still and a lambic arrives to do the distillation. The cider is distilled twice, producing a spirit that's somewhere between 70 and 80% alcohol. That then goes into barrel to age for 3 years. The barrels used are French, Tronchet and Limousin oak, although they may also use old sherry and port barrels as well. My understanding is that the distillations of the pear and the apple are kept separate, and it's at some stage during the aging process, or even perhaps just prior to bottling, that a portion of the pear spirit is blended into the apple. Now, as I say, the minimum content must be 30%. My understanding is that the Gontiers family will use 40% of the pear spirit to make up their final blend. And I should make it clear that's the only blending they do. They don't blend vintages at all. They simply produce a single vintage bottling. And their production is tiny. They only make about 7,000 bottles a year. The final stage prior to bottling is to add distilled water to the spirit to drop its alcohol content down to 40%. To be Calvados Domfrontais, the final spirit has to be at least 40% alcohol. So let's see what we make of it. The colour has a lovely, vibrant, sort of slightly coppery, fairly pale note. The strength of 40% ensures that it's clinging very readily to the glass. So let's see what we make of the aroma, shall we? The spirit has a very obvious pear nature. There's an almost sort of phenolic richness and ripeness to the whole thing. You can see notes of the oak coming in behind the fruit and sort of reinforcing that, giving a lovely sort of touch of woody backbone. But really the front of the aromas are almost a sort of an estery pear drop note, and then they start to give more of a sort of a rich pear note on the mid palate. So that's for taste. There is a really lovely richness to that. There is this sort of generous pear note with those sort of high-toned, I'm talking about sort of estery pear drop notes, sort of like the old-fashioned sweets, but the sort of lifted pear notes coming out of a sort of a rich, ripe core of almost sort of to toffee apple richness, almost a sort of a sweetness there. And there's some beautifully integrated oak notes there, and the oak's giving a sweetness and a richness to it as well. The flavours are really beautifully together because there's enough richness of the fruit that it's not being overpowered by the warming alcohol on the back palate there. There's almost hints of phenolic notes. It's almost as if I can taste ripe pear skin just around the edges of my tongue. These are very well defined flavours, and the style of the spirit is in no means dirty, but there is a quite rustic, quite old-fashioned style. This isn't squeaky clean. You get the impression that this is something that was created on a farm. You get the impression that you've got that slightly wild nature of an indigenous ferment producing a spectrum of flavours. Towards the finish, perhaps as the warming alcohol shows a little past the fruit, you start to get a little bit more of the sort of toffee apple note, leaving a nice rich finish that endures quite well. So yes, this is an individualistic, characterful spirit with a richness, a ripeness and a generosity that's very enjoyable. We have no aggregated critics score for this particular product. I would expect it to earn scores somewhere in the region of 92 or 93 out of 100. It's a wonderful quality spirit with some individualism that is lovely to see. So thank you so much for watching. I do hope you found the video of interest. If you have, we would love it if you'd press the like button. That'd be much appreciated. If you'd like to watch more of our tasting videos, do please come on back, and it would be great if you subscribe to the channel, because then that way you could set yourself an alert and you could be notified every time we publish a new tasting video. If you have any comments you'd like to leave, please pop them in the comments box below. We'd be really interested by your feedback. It's great to hear what you think about the products we're reviewing, the tastings we're doing, or anything else that relates to that. If you have any friends you think might like to watch the video, do please feel free to forward it to them. We'd really appreciate that endorsement from you. That would be fantastic. But most importantly, do please see if you can find some time, come back and join us again in the near future for another tasting. Till then, bye for now.